Hey everyone, we are thrilled to introduce you to a place very close to our heart, blushingintrovert.com, an online store of women's clothing and accessories that make the perfect gift. You see, they're passionate about spreading joy and promoting mental health awareness. Blushingintrovert.com carries cozy women's sweatshirts and quality accessories, tumblers, journals, handmade gifts, and stickers. It's the kind of comfort you'll find in their customer service as well. Everything is made by hand. Everything is in stock, ready to ship directly to your door. Women's accessories are carefully selected to bring out your inner confidence. Blushing Introvert isn't just a store, it's an extension of family. Inspired by the calling to give back, a portion of every purchase supports vital mental health initiatives. So your shopping experience with blushingintrovert.com truly makes a difference. So come check them out on either Etsy or at their online store at blushingintrovert.com and experience the warmth, love, and top-notch customer service at blushingintrovert.com, where fun meets fashion, mental health matters, and you're treated like family. Blushingintrovert.com, your happy place. Visit blushingintrovert.com today. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top technology leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. From the creators of Vigilance, the newest global technology newsletter translating cyber. Please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our podcast episodes on Apple and Spotify so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show.
So in true Lockbit fashion, I always say that they run their operation like a business. In true Lockbit fashion, he got everybody together, presented the problem, took a poll on some possible solutions, and then came up with a tiered structure on how to assess targets and what percentage of their revenue you are allowed to negotiate with.
So, hang on. So hang on a minute. So for the listeners, let's evaluate what we just heard from Johnny.
Yeah. Because my therapist would say there's
a lot to unpack here. So you, John DiMaggio, private citizen in the U.S., wearing a cape, you went undercover or you went to the dark web and you spoke to some of the most prolific, successful, powerful cybercrime gangs. Hey, how's your model going? How's business? How are your vendors? How's your team morale? How are sales? And they were like, well, Johnny, let me tell you. And they opened up to you and they shared this with you. That is friggin' ridiculous.
I don't bother. I don't do the fake personas.
No, because they know who you are.
They're using my face, as their avatar. So I just talk to them. But he does call me Johnny. Yeah. We do have conversations very similar. They are usually friendly and professional because at this point,
not personal.
There's no point in
They're not going after you. You're not even going after them. You just you were kind of exposed who they were. They respected you for doing it, and there's a mutual You're not going to Russia anytime soon. You're not going to bump into them. They're not. We know they're not coming out. They're not coming here, right? Because as soon as they do, they'll be arrested. So it's more okay, from afar, you can have a professional working relationship. There's mutual respect there.
Yeah. That's what I did. I reached out and I told him. So prior to that, I had met, or we, Anastasia and I had met with some ransom negotiators, good guys, not bad ones, and talked about some of the problems and the things that they were seeing. And so I thought it might be beneficial to have a conversation with Lockbit and say, hey, these are some of the struggles that we're seeing on our side. I'm pretty sure that if we're seeing this, there has to be something on your end that's either causing that or struggles you're seeing. There's got to be somewhere in the middle that we can meet. And, there's people out there who will be like, oh, well, you're helping support the ransomware ecosystem like that. Well, no, when companies are getting decimated, what I want to do is try to help facilitate the best possible solutions that I can. So when I have multiple negotiators telling me the same thing, the same problems are happening, I thought it would be worthwhile. So Anastasia has a good background in tracking cryptocurrency and things of that nature. I've got a background to doing direct engagements. So between the two of us, it made for a good pair, in addition to reaching out, talking, like I said, with these negotiators. So getting that information, and Lockbit shared a lot more with us back than I expected, to be honest with you.
Well, that's good, though.
Getting all the
I think it's good. I mean,
right. It's good to know, if you're a negotiator, what you're
right.
going in with, if there's rules in place already to what they're going to be allowed to negotiate. If you come in way below that, the chances of that negotiation ending prematurely and that company just being basically out of luck in their data getting exposed, I think it's better to go in knowing that. From the same thing, from an adversary side, if they're going in and they know they can only ask for a certain amount, and you have negotiators that don't know that, again, no one wins. Not that I want them to win, but no one wins in those situations. So the best case scenario is obviously to pay as little as possible to get your data back, but you also don't want to go in with the wrong approach and just have everything ripped out from under you and all your data is leaked on the internet, like we saw with, not saying that they did this, but like with Boeing, like, that negotiation ended, their data got exposed. And, that wasn't one of the ones who I talked to, but there was some other big ones where I talked to negotiators, and they were the scenario where they were coming in way down low and the other guys were way up here, and they weren't even close to meeting in the middle. So by the time, the thing is you only have so much time. That timer's
right.
going, and once that timer ends, unless someone does something to intervene, it automatically will publish that data. So the point being is, if you don't know that and you're playing, the negotiation game, going back and forth, you only have so much time to do that. And if when you're getting down to 24 hours and you're still so far off, it's not helping anyone. So again, just trying to arm people with the information going in up front to understand, well, the rules have changed on the other side, so you should be aware that this is what's happening, whether you agree with it or not. That knowledge is power, and going into that can only
absolutely. And I mean, two factors there. One, we've interviewed several of the actual negotiators, and they explain it is a really emotional, difficult time for business owners, for leaders in organizations in charge of that. Is it not, Johnny? I mean,
it is. It's tough.
They've reported guys passing
really
out.
Tough.
They reported one guy had a heart attack. They were because especially small businesses and, even mid-sized, $50 million, $70 million companies, this is their livelihood. The partners, the investors, like everything is tied to this, and it all goes away if this goes south. And it's not planned. Yes. They weren't planning on it. It's not on the forecast. It's not budgeted for. Insurance. And insurance either declines. Insurance either declines coverage, or they only limit what they'll do. They don't do everything that you would think they would do. It's a really trying time. And then the issue is, if you're going to pay and if you're going to do this, again, if you're not doing the preventative measures like we talked about earlier, right, then you have to pay. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have separate backups that they didn't already encrypt and copy and lock you out of, right? Or adequate backups, things that were tested, like you have to pay, otherwise you're out of business.
So interesting story, just what you just said. So I don't know, maybe it was 3 weeks ago, there was a conversation with Lockbit and another guy who's pretty well known in the criminal community. And they were having a conversation about this, and it surprised me to hear Lockbit say ransomware is dead. Now, he was referring to ransomware as your payload, and that encrypts all your data. And he didn't mean that the ransomware as a whole is dead, but what he was saying is, in just going in and encrypting companies' data is no longer worth the time and the effort. And the other guy was arguing back or making his point that it's still worth doing because, well, they both agreed stealing data and using that to extort a company is the most effective. The other criminal was arguing that, well, crippling them when they're already wounded and they're in the situation only is going to entice them to pay further by hurting them when they're weak. So he was advocating that you keep going and you keep doing it this way, and they are doing it this way. It was just a conversation, but the fact, again, just that actual correspondence back and forth, I just find it interesting to see what, these, we know what we think, but what do these guys think? And, they have the same conversations. We see it in the public all the time, like predictions for ransomware. And you talk about, we're going to see a move more towards data theft as opposed to just encryption. And they're having similar conversations, just with different views and angles.
Well, I'm interested to see, are they going to start telling everybody's high school teacher that they cheated in class? Are they going to start notifying every single regulatory agency, hey, they didn't do this? Oh, by the way, there was another HIPAA violation. We had somebody stop by there and there was medical records sitting in the printer tray that we saw. So we want to report them for that too. Like, are they going to be telling teacher about everything?
You didn't lock your screen.
Yeah. They also don't lock their screens when they walk away, by the way. Right? Like,
but you know what that shows? That I think sometimes, I don't know that we lose sight of, but I think other people fail to see or recognize that this is a true criminal element. I mean, these guys are criminals.
Oh, yeah. They're doing nothing differently than
they're just looking to extort money.
Yeah.
They're just trying to find new ways to extort. Yeah. That's all.
Can you not see Gotti's group, or somebody from the 80s and 90s going to certain levels like this? Like, of course they did.
Yeah.
They would go like this.
Of course. Well, they ran it like a business also.
They ran it like a business.
You take the emotional element out, and they're gonna try and not to involve people that aren't involved, but the people like the target and them, they're gonna stay focused on them, and they're just gonna do that. It's like it's like a mob hit where you don't kill the bystanders, unlike gangland shootings, right? Where they just shoot everybody.
Right.
Like, this is just mob hit. You're just killing the person you have the beef with, and that's it. So,
well, and I think that's also one of the reasons why you don't see as much of like violence as a service type of stuff being used, because once you get to that level, well, now we're talking a whole different game. Like, it's one thing for a company to pay because there's data getting stolen, but once you start talking about violence and adding other aspects to it, it changes everything. Yeah. So I think that's a good thing that it hasn't gone there for the most part, with the exception of a few groups.
Well, there's some of the younger groups. You see some of the criminal enterprises that are doing a lot of the fraud scams and the identity theft, the credit card theft. They're doing the swatting and the SIM swapping and that. But I think there's a lot. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a lot less money in that, and there's more crime. And guess what? That's going to get the heat the most. That's going to be something that, because that segues, it blurs the line between the digital and the physical world. And you still have all of that might and all of that power of the physical police that know how to solve those problems. Right?
Right. I agree. Well, and I think that, when you see, like, again, ransomware attacks today, they're going after these companies that can pay big payouts. So, they work for a few weeks to get their access, to get the data stolen, to get things encrypted, and then they get this huge payout. So for them,
it's a positive ROI.
Why do more?
It's a positive.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It just kills me that we can't figure out how to do better. I always say this, but it reminds me of the 1980s war on drugs, where we talk a big game, but we're not actually, doing anything to win it, and I can't, obviously not just me, but I can't figure out how to change that, how to get a better grasp on that. But I do know that the way we're doing it right now, things aren't going well. In that conversation, though, that I was talking about before between those two criminals, one of the things that they did note is that since like the 2020, 2021 timeframe, they've also noticed that companies are much better now with storing offline backups. And that is why encryption alone also doesn't work as well for ransom. So I guess as much as I'm saying, we do things poorly, I guess hearing that conversation between two of the, one of the top ransomware gangs in the world and a very high-ranking criminal, to have that conversation and to say that, at least we're getting better at something.
It's almost like they have a Salesforce. Like, it's almost like they're charting all of this, right? And they're seeing the trends, and they're deciding what tactics. Well, I think that's why,
Is that maybe why we're seeing more of this extortion level to release data or sell? It's no longer we're going to lock up your system and you got to pay us to unlock it. hey, we've got all your data. We know you can get your data back, but we're also going to give it to all your competitors.
Yeah.
Release it into the wild.
Yeah. Well, that brings up the whole MGM thing. They got popped or whatever, and all that data got stolen. And, there's somebody, I don't know if they're actually related, but they claim to be selling data that was stolen from that breach.
I saw that last night.
So you just don't know where it's going to end up is my point. And then you have guys that, and probably girls too, that pretend to sell that data. And there's been so many leaks now, they'll literally go take something that
they're scraping the data and then selling it.
That was one of the responses last night that I saw when they gave us a sample of the data, and somebody quickly chimed in and said, no, that's from the 2020 breach. Like, no, that's old.
Right.
Yeah,
but that's my point.
That's old.
Yeah, so there's so much out there, though, you don't even know. And now you got bad guys scamming bad guys. It's crazy. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Well, the MGM breach is so interesting simply because first of all, in no other industry do you have, when you're suffering from a data breach and your systems are down, do you have thousands of people making TikToks of your stuff being down? Like, what other industry suffers like that, right? Like, that was just brutal. Like they could say whatever they wanted to headquarters. Everybody saw what was really going on, right? And the online, everything online was down. Like, it was absolutely brutal for them. However, did they not do the right thing? Like, they didn't pay. They evaluated. The CEO came out, and I'm talking about MGM. MGM came out and said, look, we evaluated. We realized it's going to take this amount of time to restore. If we paid, we'd get it back around this amount of time. We chose to follow the law enforcement advice not to pay. We didn't pay. There's a lot of people saying, well, they're likely not going to get targeted again necessarily as much as Caesars, who paid right away. Once you pay right away, statistically, don't the odds go up for you? Like, they're kind of a soft target. Like, we can hit them again. They'll pay.
Yes, you make a good point with that. But since we're pointing out all the negatives, let's also point out the positives with Caesars. They weren't even in the news until the MGM happened. Nobody even knew about it, and none of their
handled it so, like, I know
data is going to be going out the door. So, and I'm not saying to pay. I'm just pointing it out because we're pointing out all the other side of it.
Right.
So, and I don't have that answer, but that's the hard.
Well, that's what makes those two breaches so interesting to discuss, because on the one, you followed the best practice rule, right? And look at how they suffered and how long they were down. And everybody talks about it. When they talk about it, they always talk about the MGM breach. They barely remember the other casino, right? And Caesars wasn't even going to, like, nobody knew about it. And they had already resolved it. It was already resolved by the time MGM got hit. Unbelievable. And they didn't follow what you're supposed to do. They immediately paid. And they didn't go down, and everybody was happy, and they were profitable. It wasn't a blip on their...
But bad guys made whatever it was, $10 million.
Yeah, and it wasn't even and the amount that they paid wasn't even a percentage where they even had to disclose it technically on their SEC form. I read, I could be wrong. That's what I read. But then because MGM got hit, everybody heard about them, so they're like, "Well, we better disclose it on the SEC form then." Like, you might as well tell the investors because they hear about it now. But like, they only paid $15 million. They make X amount per day. It wasn't that big of a blip for them.
Right. Well, and that's why I think the answer to should you pay or not pay a ransom really is case by case.
Yeah. I don't know how you can like that. That was my concern. Is I see the intent behind it. Don't pay the bad guys. They'll go away. Like, it's a very widespread, naive view, though, because that's not the way it is. It's not going to apply. It literally could make things 10 times worse.
Right.
Before I worked ransomware, back when I did just espionage, that was my take: is companies shouldn't be allowed to pay.
It'd be so simple. And just do it, right? And that's why I could see Congress passing it, because they were like, "Oh, well, we're paying bad guys. Well, let's just outlaw it." I'm like, well, hang on, like. You don't think, because the lawyer in me goes, okay, then how do we define the term ransomware payment? that term will be litigated 1,000 times because we can't pay a ransomware payment. We could pay a blackmail payment. We could pay some other term payment. We just can't pay a ransomware payment. They're not encrypting using ransomware, so therefore it's not a ransomware payment. Like, you can see the floodgates of litigation open. Hey everyone, we are thrilled to introduce you to a place very close to our heart, blushingintrovert.com, an online store of women's clothing and accessories that make the perfect gift. You see, they're passionate about spreading joy and promoting mental health awareness. Blushingintrovert.com carries cozy women's sweatshirts and quality accessories, tumblers, journals, handmade gifts, and stickers. It's the kind of comfort you'll find in their customer service as well. Everything is made by hand. Everything is in stock, ready to ship directly to your door. Women's accessories are carefully selected to bring out your inner confidence. Blushing Introvert isn't just a store, it's an extension of family. Inspired by the calling to give back, a portion of every purchase supports vital mental health initiatives. So your shopping experience with blushingintrovert.com truly makes a difference. So come check them out on either Etsy or at their online store at blushingintrovert.com and experience the warmth, love, and top-notch customer service at blushingintrovert.com, where fun meets fashion, mental health matters, and you're treated like family. Blushingintrovert.com, your happy place. Visit blushingintrovert.com today.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's people. Again, I used to feel that way until I started working on it. But the first time you were inside looking at it from the victim's eyes, it makes a lot more sense when you're seeing like this company is going to be decimated. They're going to lose 700 people are going to lose their jobs, and 50,000 people's PAI is going to go out the door.
And business is hard enough. Like, the economy is tough enough. Like, these guys get in the mix and they throw this at you, and you have to decide, like, if they take that option away from you, you're like, then I'm just out of business.
Right.
How are you going to insure that company? Think about if you're insuring that company.
Don't get me started on
like how are you, like, think about that. Like, this company's going to go to get insurance for things, and they're going to be like, why would we insure you? Like, you can't even pay the ransom if you got hit, right? Like, you'll be out of business. They're going to start assessing that. I mean, it's really bad.
Negotiation company that I know several negotiators at, and I talked to them on this topic, and I was asking about the insurance, and they told me that out of 49 cases last year, that 48 of the 49 that these are the ones that were insured, didn't pay out the insurance, that they literally just will find a way to not pay, and now that they just recommend that people don't even bother because the insurance companies are taking your money and they're not actually paying. In that, again, I know it's a whole other conversation, but the insurance companies, they make me sick.
It is a really good one, and we've tried to have different people on to address that. It all kind of depends if they're coming from the insurance angle. They have a propensity to say, well, of course they'll pay if it's a valid claim, but then you get into litigate. You get into the terms of art. Well, if it says this in the policy, that means this, and then it falls in place, no coverage. Right. Here it falls in place, coverage, and it's like, okay, that's a dry discussion, and it's also something that most business owners don't care about. They're like, if there's a data breach, will I be covered? And they're not. Yes. They're told yes, but the answer is really no a lot of times.
Yeah,
right. I agree.
Well, then you've got the business owner, David. Remember the one guest we had is he sat there and literally watched the icons on his desktop turn to white squares as everything was being locked up from him, and he had no way to stop it, and said he was actually physically ill to the point that he had to run to the restroom because he knew exactly what was happening and he had no control over it.
And he didn't know how to go home and tell his wife because
that was another part.
His retirement is tied up in that. His house is tied up in that. Like, how do you do that? How do you explain, because we bought this software and that manufacturer had a vulnerability. We lost our house, honey. Right. Like, what? Like, how do you explain that to people that aren't even in technology? I don't know how to have that conversation. Yeah. And you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to have that conversation, right?
And that's why this is such a tough.
But then you're going to
topic.
tell him, oh, by the way, you can't get yourself out of it. You can't pay the ransom.
We can't pay you.
Oh, because the law says no. Well, guess what? The other side of the law, the other side of the lawyers there are going to say, yeah, but here's the safe harbor for that law, right? Here's the exception to that. For every rule, there's 1,000 exceptions. So you want to pass that law to look good, pass that law, but then you're going to be able to do it. It's interesting. And I'm not necessarily a proponent of paying, but in the right circumstance, you've got to at least have the right to do it. Like, you can't take away the people's rights.
I don't think banning it is.
I don't think you can take that away.
No, I don't think you can.
Right? Like, you can't take that away.
Well, what about limiting it? What if there was a cap? Like, if it's
like
under...
tort reform. It's interesting. It's like tort reform. It's like the states that banned. Oh yeah, remember like the vaccines used to be an issue, and then Reagan came in and had the Vaccine Acts, and now in certain states there's tort reform. So even if you have a runaway jury, you only get like $100,000. So people are like, well, do I even litigate it? Do I not? But it's still a valid claim. That's an interesting topic.
Yeah, because then ransomware attackers are going to know what they can and can't make, and a lot of them are going to find other things.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
I think that might be that might be one way to approach it.
That is really interesting.
That's a great point.
That is interesting.
I like it.
I'll announce my Senate run.
Limiting ransom, like
I'm
tort
going to be
reform.
your campaign manager. I'm going to drive the limousine, buddy.
The problem is like tort reform and things like that can work because you're regulating companies under your jurisdiction. Here we're trying to put a cap on the value of what you can pay criminals when they threaten to do something to you. It's a little different.
Right.
So
it is a little different, but I think it's still closer to a solution than just putting a cap on it.
Yeah.
But then, and then I could see the dark web. I could see the dark web forums. So here's this package of data. You can get this, which is the maximum amount allowable under the law, right? But then you can also use this data to create fake credit cards, do this, use identity theft. Yeah. And, it's still really valuable. You can see how they'll shine up the package of the data to sell it on one of the marketplaces.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stolen data, there's so much of it out there now. A lot of it hasn't even been used yet. It's literally just sitting because it takes so long to be processed for other criminal activity. I mean, that's the only, benefit of that there's been such a high volume is that I think it's going to happen eventually, but it takes a while to get through and to do what you just said, to use that to further, criminal endeavors with that information.
Well,
so
absolutely. And Johnny, thank you again. We're not done talking to you, but we're done for today. But I'll tell you that
for this episode, there's going to be another one.
Well, I'll tell you that gets to the point of everybody should be freezing their credit. Like absolutely under no. It's free
and have identity protection because it's worth the $300.
But I mean, freezing your credit is free, and they can't go create new debt on your behalf. Right. You're not liable for anything. They can't do it unless you literally approve it at the moment. So.
Well, one thing to say is a lot of people watching this will know this, but I literally had this conversation last night with that family member, and they said to me, but then I can't use my credit cards or my debit cards. And I'm like, no,
you can use all of your credit cards. Your FICO score can still go up when you pay on time. Marks can still go down when he pays late. Like, it all works out. Right. This goes like this. I'm just glad I'm not a vendor of yours. But I'm just teasing, buddy. But but the thing is like everything still works. It's just no new credit can be taken out on your name.
How often do you need that? Maybe a couple times a year at most, and it takes about 20 minutes to.
I literally did it like one of the times. I forgot which store. We were in some store and we bought clothes for the kids or something, and like the bill was kind of up there, and they're like, "Do you want a store credit card? You can actually get like 20% off or 10% off." And I'm like, we bought so much that it actually made sense to do it. And then we were never going to use the card, but we can't keep our credit frozen. So I literally got on the app, unlocked it. They ran it. They did it, locked it back right there in line. It was that easy. So I'm telling you, it's a good way of doing it.
Or you can have a 7 credit score.
Yeah, you can always just do that. Well, think of the fun. Think of the fun you can have going from like a 750 credit score to a 7. Think of all the stuff you can get and just not pay.
How else?
Like,
how better to get back at these bad guys? Go ahead, steal my data.
Yeah. Take my data.
Send me a thank you. Like you've never seen a 7. You've set a new level of lowness.
I dare you to take over my identity. I got a 7 credit score. That's hilarious.
Now who's the victim?
Oh, not a bad that's not a disclaimer. That is not a best practice for anyone to do.
No, that is not a
This is only used for television purposes only.
Single-digit
yes, we do not condone nor approve of any single-digit credit scores. So, Johnny, before we go, though, what's up next? What are you working on writing? I know you can't disclose it, but
you said you were writing.
Yeah, I'm working on the Ransomware Diaries for. Yeah, it's going to be different. It's not Lockbit. That's going to be different.
So Lockbit's not going to be on the next one.
What's funny though is Lockbit. The leader of Lockbit did tell me that he did vote for the Ransomware Diaries because it was on Twitter that it got nominated for article of the research of the year. Yeah, and so he told me
he voted for it. That is awesome. That is. Wouldn't that be funny if he was really in Congress? Like his real identity. He's actually, I live in New Hampshire. I'm a congressman.
Right.
Because you're like, how are you voting on the Sands thing? Are you able? Were you there when I accepted the last reward? Like,
how do you have a $200 million net?
I should invite him as my +1 and see if he goes.
Just be like, oh my god. So you're doing Ransomware 4. What's it about generally?
So I'm doing it. I don't want to say the group that I'm doing it on just yet, but I'm doing it on a group. But it's expanded into some crazy things. So the original idea, obviously, is around a ransomware group, but it has crossed paths into a lot of other criminal activities that are taking place on the dark web. And it unfortunately keeps intersecting with child porn rings. So while I'm doing all of this, I've been also pushing a lot of that information over to law enforcement. But the so what of this is sort of that I think I've stumbled onto something we really haven't seen before, is where not that this ransomware group is involved in kiddie porn, but a lot of the supporting elements that provide resources to ransomware groups are involved in some really bad things. So that money in that ecosystem does a lot more than just take, ransom extortion from companies. It feeds a lot of bad things, and that's really what I think is going to come out in this research. But I picked a really good topic because there's so much drama and crazy shit that's happening with it. So it's fun to write. It was a little crazy to research and follow and not get myself confused, but I'm having fun writing it.
So that'll be interesting because that really goes into when you think about cybercrime.
We were talking about earlier. It's criminals. Criminals are going to criminal, right? That's right. It's exactly what that is. Wow. Any kind of ETA on that, Johnny?
Yeah, I'll be done with it soon, but I don't think they're going to put it out until after the holidays. Two of the things I'm also looking at down the road is eventually Black Cat or Alpha V, but I'm waiting to. I like to wait till things,
They're really interesting the way they're approaching things. I would have thought Lockbit would have done something like that. And when I saw Black Hat, Alpha V did it, and I'm like, wow, pretty interesting. Now,
well, that's their arch nemesis.
They really are. They're frenemies, basically, right? And
no, they don't. They don't get along at all. They have a historic bad history together. Lockbit stole their developer, things like that.
I remember you telling us about that.
Yeah. So not saying that they don't, have conversations.
I just meant they're frenemies, meaning like if there was a convention of mafia guys over in Russia, like they might be there.
It's like
they might be at different tables, but they'll be there.
Right.
They're in the same associations, maybe. So really interesting, Johnny. Well, let's plan on, please keep us posted on that. You'll definitely be back. We started doing a bi-weekly newsletter through LinkedIn and other channels, just summarizing, because in our company and the people that we deal with, we deal in 4 verticals: finance, healthcare, legal, and SLED, basically education. And so what we're doing is there's so much news all over the place. People don't know what to pay attention to and what not. So we're kind of segmenting the most recent breaches or new regulations from CISA or whatever it is that's interesting within those 4 verticals. And then we're putting that out. It's called vigilance. It's more like a digest with a little bit of insight. It's more just kind of translating it into English, into like people that don't understand cybersecurity but want to know about it because they're in the healthcare space or they're in this. That's where we're like, here's a breach. Here's why it's important. Here's this. Here's why this might matter. Like that type of thing. So,
No, that sounds good.
Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us.